The woman with eyes like storm clouds arrived in Las Vegas, Nevada, on a Tuesday morning in July 1878, and before her boot touched the dusty main street, three men crossed themselves and two women pulled their children indoors, as though death itself had dismounted from that tired mare. Florence Brennan was 23 years old, carried a worn leather satchel, and possessed something the town would later whisper about in frightened tones, though none could name it properly. She had traveled alone from Missouri, following a lead on her brother's whereabouts, but the journey had changed her in ways that showed in the strange stillness of her gaze and the way animals seemed to watch her with unusual intensity. The Silver Spur Hotel refused her a room. The clerk, a balding man named Henderson, simply shook his head and pointed toward the door without explanation. Florence stood at that desk for a long moment, dust from the trail still coating her dark traveling dress, and something flickered in the air around her, a heat shimmer that had nothing to do with the Nevada summer. Henderson backed away until his shoulders hit the wall. She left without argument, leading her horse down the street while conversations died in her wake. Vincent Rourke watched this exchange from across the street, leaning against the post outside the general store where he had been checking supplies. He was 26, a working cowboy for the Double J Ranch, and he had seen enough of the world to recognize fear when it moved through a crowd like wildfire. What interested him was not the fear itself, but the woman who seemed entirely unsurprised by it. She walked with the careful posture of someone who had learned to make herself small, to take up less space, to apologize for existing. Yet something about her refused to diminish. Her red hair, escaping from its pins, caught the sunlight like copper wire. Her face, pale beneath the travel dust, held a beauty that seemed almost inconvenient, as though she wished she could shed it like an unwanted coat. Vincent crossed the street, his spurs making soft music against the packed earth. "Madam," he called, and she turned, one hand still holding her mare's reins. Up close, he could see that her eyes were not actually gray, but a peculiar shade of blue so pale they appeared colorless in certain light. "You are looking for lodging?" "I was," Florence said, her voice low and careful. "It seems Las Vegas is not welcoming to travelers." "It is not you specifically," Vincent said, though he suspected it absolutely was. Henderson is particular about his clientele. There is a boarding house on the east end of town. Mrs. Chen runs it. She might have space. Florence studied him with an intensity that made Vincent understand why others found her unsettling. It felt as though she was reading something written beneath his skin, cataloging the truth of him in ways that had nothing to do with his words. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you need help," Vincent said simply. "And because refusing someone shelter in this heat is not civilized." Something shifted in her expression, a minute relaxation around her eyes. "Thank you. I will try the boarding house." She paused, then extended her free hand. "Florence Brennan, Vincent Rourke." Her hand was warm in his, and when they touched, he felt a strange pulse of something, like standing too close to lightning. She pulled away quickly, and he saw wariness flash across her face. She had felt it too, whatever it was. Vincent walked with her to Mrs. Chen's boarding house, leading his own horse, a paint gelding named River. Florence said little, but he noticed how she tracked every person they passed, how her shoulders tensed when a group of miners crossed the street to avoid them. By the time they reached the tidy house with its whitewashed fence, Vincent had counted 7 instances of people actively moving away from Florence Brennan, and she had not reacted to a single one. Mrs. Chen, a sharp-eyed woman who had come to Nevada during the railroad construction and stayed when her husband found silver, opened the door and looked Florence up and down. "You need a room?" "If you have one available," Florence said. "I can pay." "I have one. $3 a week, includes breakfast and supper. No men in the rooms, no drinking, no disturbances." Mrs. Chen glanced at Vincent. "She is trouble?" "No more than anyone else," Vincent said, which was both true and possibly a complete lie. He had no idea what Florence Brennan was or was not. Mrs. Chen studied Florence for another long moment, then nodded. Come in. You look half dead from the road. I will draw water for a bath." Relief washed over Florence's face with such naked gratitude that Vincent felt something tighten in his chest. "Thank you," she said, and her voice broke slightly on the words. Vincent tipped his hat to both women. "Madam Mrs. Chen, I hope you find your stay comfortable, Miss Brennan." He turned to leave, but Florence spoke again. "Mr. Rourke." He looked back. "Why did you walk with me? You must have seen how people reacted. That will attach to you now." Vincent considered this, then smiled. "Then I suppose I will have to learn to live with it. Good day, Miss Brennan." He left before she could respond, but he felt her gaze on his back all the way to where River waited patiently. As he mounted and turned toward the ranch, Vincent wondered what exactly he had just involved himself in. The smart move would be to forget Florence Brennan, to let her conduct whatever business had brought her to Las Vegas and move on with his life. But Vincent had never been particularly good at smart moves. The Double J Ranch lay 5 miles outside town, a sprawling operation that ran cattle across the scrubland and employed 15 cowboys year-round. Vincent had been working there for 3 years, ever since he had drifted into Nevada from Colorado, looking for work and a place where questions about his past were not considered polite conversation. The foreman, a grizzled former Texas Ranger named Jack Thornton, had taken one look at Vincent's rope work and hired him on the spot. That evening, over dinner in the bunkhouse, the other hands were full of talk about the strange woman who had come to town. "Saw her myself," said Charlie Morton, a gap-toothed cowboy from Kansas. "Something is not right about her. Way she looks at you, it is like she sees straight through to your bones. I heard she made Henderson's lamp explode just by walking past it," added Tommy Lou, Mrs. Chen's nephew, who worked as a wrangler. "Glass everywhere. He said it was like the air itself got hot." Vincent kept his attention on his plate, saying nothing. He had learned that the best way to avoid gossip was to contribute nothing to it. But Jack Thornton, sitting at the head of the table, caught his eye. "You walked her to Chen's place, Vincent. You see anything unusual?" "I saw a woman who needed directions," Vincent said evenly. "Nothing more mysterious than that." "People are scared," Jack said. "Talk is she is some kind of witch, that she has unnatural abilities." Vincent set down his fork. "People are scared of anything they do not understand. Doesn't make their fear rational. She is just a woman passing through town." "Maybe," Jack said, "but you be careful all the same. Fear makes people dangerous, rational or not." Vincent nodded, but as he lay in his bunk that night, listening to the snores of the other hands, he thought about Florence Brennan's pale eyes and the way the air had seemed to pulse when they touched. He thought about her careful posture and her lack of surprise at being refused and avoided. Whatever was happening with her, she had lived with it long enough to expect rejection. That, more than anything else, made him angry on her behalf. The next day was his day off, and Vincent rode back into Las Vegas with the vague intention of picking up supplies and perhaps having a drink at the Golden Nugget. What he actually did was find himself walking past Mrs. Chen's boarding house 3 times before finally admitting to himself that he was hoping to see Florence Brennan again. She was sitting on the front porch, a book open in her lap, when he passed the 4th time. She looked up, and something that might have been amusement crossed her face. "Mr. Rourke, are you lost? You have passed this house several times now." Vincent felt heat rise to his face. "I was just walking." "In circles." Florence closed her book, keeping one finger between the pages to mark her place. "You can sit if you would like. Mrs. Chen has gone to the market, but I do not think she would object to conversation on the porch." Vincent climbed the steps and settled into the chair beside hers, removing his hat. In the daylight, he could see that Florence looked less exhausted than she had yesterday, though there was still a tightness around her eyes that spoke of worry. "Are you settling in well?" "As well as can be expected." Florence set the book aside. "Mrs. Chen is kind. She has not asked me why people react to me the way they do, which I appreciate." "Why do they?" Vincent asked, then immediately wished he could take the question back. I apologize. That is not my business. No, it is fair. Florence looked out at the street where a woman was hurrying past without looking at the boarding house. I have a gift or a curse, depending on your perspective. I can sense things, emotions, intentions, sometimes thoughts if they are strong enough. And when I feel something intensely, things happen around me. Objects move, the air heats up. Once I shattered every window in a room when I was frightened. She turned to look at him. People sense it even when I am controlling it. They know, on some instinctive level, that I am different, and it terrifies them. Vincent absorbed this, watching her face. She was braced for rejection, he realized. She had told him this expecting him to leave, and she was already armoring herself against the blow. How long have you been able to do this? The question seemed to surprise her. Since I was 13. It started after my mother died. My father could not cope with it. He sent me to live with my aunt in St. Louis. She was kinder about it, but even she was afraid. My brother Daniel was the only one who never treated me differently, but he left 2 years ago, heading west, and I have been trying to find him. The last letter I received was from Las Vegas, 6 months ago, then nothing. You came all this way alone? Vincent asked. I have learned that traveling alone is easier than trying to explain myself to companions. Florence's voice was matter-of-fact, but Vincent heard the loneliness underneath it. Besides, who would travel with someone like me? I would, Vincent said and meant it. Florence studied him again with that unsettling intensity. You are not afraid of me. Should I be? Vincent asked. You have not harmed me. You have not threatened me. You are simply different. The world is full of different things. Most people do not see it that way. I am not most people. Vincent leaned forward, elbows on his knees. My mother was Arapaho. My father was Irish. I grew up between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. I know what it is like to be the thing that people cannot categorize, the thing that makes them uncomfortable just by existing. So no, Florence Brennan, I am not afraid of what you can do. I am only interested in who you are. For the first time since he had met her, Florence smiled. It transformed her face, chasing away the careful guardedness and revealing something warm and genuinely beautiful. You are an unusual man, Vincent Rourke. So I have been told. He smiled back. Tell me about your brother. What was he doing in Las Vegas? Florence's smile faded. He was working as a surveyor, mapping routes for potential railroad expansion. He is brilliant with mathematics and engineering. His last letter said he had found something interesting in the hills outside town, some kind of unusual mineral deposit. He was excited about it. Then silence. Have you gone to the sheriff? Vincent asked. Yes, yesterday, after I settled in. Sheriff Morrison said that men drift in and out of mining towns all the time, that Daniel probably just moved on without writing. He was not interested in investigating. Florence's hands tightened on the book in her lap, and Vincent saw the air around her fingers shimmer slightly. She took a deep breath, and the shimmer faded. I am sorry. I am trying to control it. Do not apologize, Vincent said. You are worried about your brother. That is reasonable. And Sheriff Morrison is lazy. Everyone knows it. He would not investigate a crime if it happened on his own front step. What should I do? Florence asked, and Vincent heard the exhaustion in her voice. I have come all this way, and I have no idea where to start looking. Vincent made a decision. You start with me. I know the area around Las Vegas as well as anyone. I know the miners, the prospectors, the people who work in the hills. If your brother was surveying out there, someone will have seen him. We will find out what happened. Why would you do this? Florence asked. You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Because you need help, Vincent said, echoing his words from the day before. And because I think you have spent too long with people being afraid of you. Someone should be on your side for a change. Florence looked at him for a long moment, and Vincent saw something in her eyes that might have been the beginning of tears. She blinked them back. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I do not know what I did to deserve your kindness, but thank you." "You do not have to deserve kindness," Vincent said. "That is not how it works." They spent the rest of the afternoon on that porch talking. Florence told him about growing up in Missouri, about her mother who had died of fever, and her father who had been a banker, stern and uncomfortable with emotion even before his daughter developed abilities he could not explain. She told him about Daniel, 2 years her senior, who had defended her against neighborhood children who called her a witch, who had helped her learn to control her gift, who had been her best friend in a world that did not understand her. Vincent told her about his childhood in Colorado, about his mother's people who had been driven from their lands, about his father who had loved his mother fiercely and been ostracized by his own family for it. He told her about working ranches since he was 15, about drifting from town to town, never quite fitting in anywhere. He did not mention the scars on his back from the rancher in Wyoming who had taken exception to Vincent's mixed heritage and decided to teach him a lesson with a bullwhip. Some stories were not for first conversations. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Mrs. Chen returned with her market basket. She looked at Vincent, then at Florence, and something knowing crossed her face. "Mr. Rourke, you are staying for dinner?" Vincent glanced at Florence, who nodded slightly. "If it would not be an imposition, madam." "No imposition. Come inside. I have made too much food anyway." Dinner was simple but excellent. Rice and vegetables and pork cooked in a sauce that made Vincent want to lick his plate clean. Mrs. Chen's nephew Tommy joined them, and the conversation was easy, free of the tension that seemed to follow Florence everywhere else. When Vincent finally left, promising to return the next day to begin searching for information about Daniel Brennan, Florence walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said again, "for everything, for not being afraid, for offering to help, for treating me like a person instead of a dangerous object." Vincent put his hat on, then paused. "Florence, you are not a dangerous object. You are a woman with a gift. The problem is not with you. The problem is with people who fear what they do not understand. Do not let their fear convince you that you are the thing that is wrong." Florence reached out and touched his hand just briefly. The same pulse of heat passed between them, but this time Vincent did not pull away. He let it flow through him, warm and strange and not unpleasant. Florence's eyes widened. "You felt that?" "Yes." "And you are still not afraid?" "No," Vincent said, "I am not afraid." He left then, riding back to the Double J Ranch under a sky full of stars, and he knew with absolute certainty that his life had just changed direction. He had met people before who interested him, women who caught his eye, but Florence Brennan was something different. She was a mystery and a challenge, and someone who needed the things he could offer: acceptance, help, understanding. And underneath all of that, he felt a pull toward her that had nothing to do with her gift and everything to do with the way she smiled when she forgot to guard herself, the way she spoke about her brother with such fierce love, the way she had survived a world that feared her and still remained kind. The next morning, Vincent asked Jack Thornton for a few days off. The foreman studied him over his coffee, then nodded. "This about that woman? Her brother is missing. She needs help finding him. People might talk you spending time with her." "Let them talk," Vincent said. Jack smiled slightly. "You are a good man, Vincent Rourke. Stubborn as hell, but good. Take the time you need. But be careful. Whatever that woman is, it has people spooked." Vincent met Florence at the boarding house an hour after breakfast. She had changed into a simpler dress, brown calico that was more practical for riding, and had braided her red hair into a single plait down her back. Mrs. Chen had loaned her a horse, a sturdy bay mare named Blossom, and Florence sat the saddle with easy competence. They rode out toward the hills where Daniel had been working, following the rough directions from his last letter. The land around Las Vegas was harsh and beautiful, desert scrub punctuated by red rock formations and distant mountains. The July heat was intense, and they stopped frequently to water the horses and themselves. "Tell me what you know about the mineral deposit Daniel mentioned," Vincent said as they rode. Florence pulled the letter from her saddlebag and read aloud. He said it was unlike anything he had seen before, some kind of crystalline structure that seemed to generate heat. He thought it might have commercial applications, but wanted to study it more before reporting it to the railroad company. He mentioned it was in a canyon about 8 miles northeast of town, near an old Spanish mission ruin. "I know that area," Vincent said. "There are a few played-out silver mines up there, and prospectors still work the area sometimes. We will start there." They reached the canyon by early afternoon. The Spanish mission was barely recognizable, just crumbling adobe walls and the remnants of a bell tower. Florence dismounted and walked through the ruins, her hand trailing over the sun-warmed walls. "He was here, I can feel it." "Your gift?" Vincent asked. "Yes, strong emotions leave impressions sometimes. Daniel was excited when he was here, hopeful." She moved deeper into the ruins, toward what had once been the chapel. Vincent followed, watching her face as she concentrated. Suddenly she stopped, and the air around her began to shimmer with heat. "Something happened here. Something bad. I can feel fear and anger, and then nothing, like he was just cut off." Vincent moved to her side. "Florence, breathe. You need to stay in control." She looked at him, and her eyes were unfocused, lost in whatever she was sensing. The heat intensified, and Vincent felt sweat spring up on his forehead that had nothing to do with the desert sun. He took her hand, squeezing gently. "Come back. Focus on me. You are safe. I am here." The heat flickered, then faded. Florence blinked, and her eyes cleared. "I am sorry. It was so strong. Vincent, something bad happened to Daniel here. I do not know what, but I can feel the echo of it." "Then we keep looking," Vincent said. "We will find answers." They searched the area around the mission for another hour, looking for any sign of Daniel or his work. Vincent finally found something: a leather notebook, wedged between rocks near what looked like the entrance to a small mine shaft. The cover was weathered but intact. He brought it to Florence, who took it with shaking hands. "This is his. This is Daniel's field journal." She opened it, paging through sketches and notes. "Look, he was documenting the crystal deposit. He found it inside this mine." She pointed to the dark entrance. "We need to go in." Vincent studied the entrance. It looked unstable, and he had no idea how deep it went. "It could be dangerous." "I do not care," Florence said. "My brother went in there. I am going in too." Vincent could see there was no arguing with her. He retrieved a lantern from his saddlebag and lit it. "Stay close to me. If anything seems unstable, we leave immediately. Agreed?" "Agreed." The mine shaft was narrow and low-ceilinged, forcing them to move carefully. The air was cooler inside, a relief after the desert heat, but it smelled of dust and old rock. Vincent held the lantern high, illuminating rough walls that bore the marks of pickaxes. They had gone perhaps 50 feet when the tunnel opened into a wider chamber. Florence gasped. The walls of the chamber were embedded with crystals that caught the lantern light and threw it back in strange, shifting patterns. The crystals were unlike anything Vincent had seen before, deep red shot through with veins of gold, and even in the cool of the mine, they radiated heat. "This is what Daniel found," Florence said, moving toward the nearest wall. She reached out to touch one of the crystals, then pulled back. "They are hot, much hotter than they should be." Vincent moved the lantern, examining the chamber. In the far corner, he saw something that made his stomach drop. "Florence!" She turned and he pointed. There were signs of a struggle: disturbed earth, a broken lantern, and something dark staining the rocks. Blood. Florence made a sound like she had been struck. She moved toward the corner, and Vincent followed, his hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt. There was more blood on the ground, and what looked like scraps of fabric, but no body. Someone hurt him here, Florence said, her voice shaking. Someone hurt Daniel here and then took him. But why? Why would anyone do this? Those crystals, Vincent said. If they are as unusual as his notes suggest, someone might have wanted to keep the discovery secret. If Daniel was reporting to the railroad company, prospectors or miners might have seen him as a threat to their claims. Then he might still be alive, Florence said. If they took him, he might still be alive. Vincent wanted to believe that, but the amount of blood concerned him. He kept that thought to himself. We need to talk to the miners and prospectors who work this area. Someone knows something. They emerged from the mine into the harsh afternoon sunlight, and Florence stood blinking back tears. Vincent wanted to comfort her, but was not sure how. He settled for staying close, letting her know through his presence that she was not alone. I will not let this go, Florence said. I will find out what happened to him. We will find out, Vincent corrected. You are not alone in this. Over the next 3 days, they rode through the hills, talking to every prospector, miner, and drifter they could find. Most were suspicious and unhelpful, but a few remembered seeing Daniel Brennan. An old prospector named Gus Malone remembered him particularly well. Bright young fellow, always asking questions, Gus said, sitting outside his tent and drinking coffee that looked thick enough to stand a spoon in. He was excited about something he found, kept talking about crystals and heat energy. Then one day, maybe 5 months back, he stopped coming around. Figured he moved on. Did you see anyone else interested in his work? Vincent asked. Anyone who might have followed him? Gus thought about it, his weathered face creasing further. There was a group of men came through around that time. They were not miners, not really. Too well-dressed, too organized. Led by a fellow named Crane, Cyrus Crane. He was asking about mineral deposits, offering money for information. Had a mean look about him. Florence leaned forward. Do you know where we can find this Crane? He had an office in town, above the assayer's shop. But I heard he left Las Vegas a few months back. Might have gone to Carson City. That is where the money men go when they have got something big. They thanked Gus and rode back to town as the sun was setting. Florence was quiet, processing the information, and Vincent could see the tension in her shoulders. When they reached the boarding house, she finally spoke. Cyrus Crane, that name was in Daniel's journal. He mentioned that a man named Crane had approached him, offering to buy his survey data. Daniel refused because he was contracted to the railroad. Do you think Crane might have taken him? It is possible, Vincent said. If the crystal deposit is valuable enough, men have killed for less, but we need more information before we make accusations. Florence dismounted and stood looking up at him. In the fading light, her eyes looked darker, more troubled. Vincent, you have done so much already. You have taken days away from your work to help me. I cannot ask you to continue. You are not asking, Vincent said. I am offering. Florence, I'm going to see this through. For Daniel and for you. Why? She asked. Why do you care so much? Vincent dismounted and stood facing her. The truth was complicated and simple at the same time. He cared because she was alone and needed help. He cared because he understood what it meant to be different, to be feared for things beyond your control. But there was something else, something growing between them that had nothing to do with duty or sympathy, and everything to do with the way his heart beat faster when she smiled, the way he found himself thinking about her at odd moments, the way he wanted to stand between her and a world that had hurt her too many times. Because it matters, he said finally. Because you matter. Florence searched his face, and he saw the moment she decided to trust him, to believe him. She reached out and took his hand, and the heat pulse that passed between them was stronger now, almost electric. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me, for not turning away." Vincent squeezed her hand. "I will never turn away." The next morning, they visited the assayer's office. The assayer, a neat little man named Pettigrew, confirmed that Cyrus Crane had indeed rented the office upstairs for several months the previous year. He was looking into various mineral prospects, paid his rent on time, kept to himself. Then he cleared out in February. Said he was moving operations to Carson City. "I have an address if you want it." Vincent took the address, and he and Florence spent the rest of the day planning their next move. Carson City was over 100 miles away, a journey that would take several days. Vincent would need to get more time off from the ranch, and Florence would need to prepare for extended travel. But neither of them questioned whether they would go. Daniel's trail led to Carson City, and that was where they would follow it. That evening, Vincent was preparing to return to the ranch when Florence stopped him on the boarding house porch. "Will you walk with me? I need to clear my head, and I do not want to go alone." They walked through the quiet streets of Las Vegas as the desert air cooled and stars began to appear. Florence was silent for a long time, and Vincent let her gather her thoughts. Finally, she spoke. "I have been alone for so long," she said. "Ever since my ability manifested, I have been alone. People either fear me or they want to use me. A man in St. Louis when I was 19, he courted me for months. I thought he cared about me. Then I discovered he was only interested in what I could do, how I might help him cheat at cards or manipulate business rivals. When I refused, he spread rumors about me being a witch. I had to leave the city." Vincent felt anger kindle in his chest. "He was a fool. He was practical," Florence said bitterly. "Why care about the person when you can exploit the ability? It taught me to trust no one, to keep my distance. But you are different, Vincent. You have never asked me to demonstrate what I can do. You have never treated me like a curiosity or a tool. You just treat me like a person. Do you know how rare that is?" "It should not be rare," Vincent said. "It should be the baseline of human decency." Florence laughed. But it was a sad sound. Should be. But the world is not made of shoulds. She stopped walking and turned to face him. "I am afraid of what we might find in Carson City. I am afraid Daniel is dead. I am afraid that I traveled all this way for nothing. But I am more afraid of losing this, whatever this is between us. Because when we find answers about Daniel, you will go back to your life and I will go back to mine, and this will end." Vincent took her hands in his. "Florence, I do not know what we will find in Carson City. I do not know what happened to your brother, but I do know this. Whatever is growing between us, it does not have to end. I do not want it to end." "You cannot want someone like me," Florence said. "I am too different, too strange. Eventually, you would see me the way everyone else does." "I see you exactly the way everyone else does," Vincent said. "The difference is that I see your gift as part of you, not the whole of you. I see a woman who is brave enough to travel alone across dangerous country to find her brother. I see someone who has survived years of fear and rejection and still has the capacity to be kind. I see someone who makes me want to be better than I am. That is what I see when I look at you, Florence Brennan." Tears were streaming down Florence's face now. "Vincent, I am falling in love with you. I did not mean to. I know it is too fast, too complicated. But I cannot help it. You are the first person who has looked at me and not flinched. You are the first person who has made me feel like I might deserve to be loved." Vincent pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She was warm against him, her face pressed to his chest, and he could feel her tears soaking through his shirt. "You do deserve to be loved. And Florence, I am falling in love with you too. I have been since the moment I saw you standing in the Silver Spur Hotel, refusing to apologize for taking up space in the world. She pulled back enough to look up at him, and in the starlight, her pale eyes were luminous. What are we going to do? We are going to Carson City, Vincent said. We are going to find out what happened to Daniel, and then we are going to figure out the rest. Together. Florence rose on her toes and kissed him. It was tentative at first, a question, and Vincent answered by pulling her closer and kissing her back. Heat flared between them, not the heat of her gift, but the heat of two people finding something unexpected and precious. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I have never been able to do that before, Florence said wonderingly. Kiss someone without worrying about losing control, about hurting them. But with you, it feels natural. It feels safe. It is safe, Vincent promised. I am not afraid of what you can do, Florence. I will never be afraid of you. They walked back to the boarding house hand in hand, and when Vincent finally rode back to the Double J Ranch, he felt like the world had shifted on its axis. He was in love with Florence Brennan, with her strength and her scars and her strange gift. And somehow, miraculously, she loved him back. Jack Thornton took one look at Vincent's face the next morning and grinned. So it is like that, is it? It is like that, Vincent admitted. Jack, I need more time off. We need to go to Carson City. Her brother's trail leads there. Take what you need, Jack said. But Vincent, be careful. Love makes men do foolish things. Make sure you keep your head about you. I will, Vincent promised, though he suspected it was already too late for keeping his head. He had already lost it to a red-haired woman with storm cloud eyes. They left for Carson City 3 days later, packs loaded with supplies for the journey. Mrs. Chen had packed them enough food for a week, and she had hugged Florence tightly before they left. You found a good man, she told Florence. Do not let him go. I do not intend to, Florence had replied. The journey to Carson City took them through some of the most beautiful and harsh country Vincent had ever seen. They rode through valleys dotted with sagebrush, over mountain passes where the air was thin and cool, past lakes so blue they looked like pieces of fallen sky. At night, they camped under the stars, and Florence practiced controlling her gift, showing Vincent how she could make small objects move, how she could heat water without a fire, how she could sense emotions in the air like a physical presence. It is not always controllable, she explained, as they sat by their campfire on the third night. When I am scared or angry, it happens without my permission. That is what frightens people. They think I could hurt them without meaning to. Could you? Vincent asked, not because he was afraid, but because he wanted to understand. Florence considered this. Yes, if I lost control completely, I could. I shattered those windows when I was 13 because I was terrified. My father had just told me he was sending me away, and the fear and anger and hurt just exploded out of me. It took months to learn even basic control. Daniel helped me. He would sit with me for hours, teaching me breathing exercises, meditation techniques. He saved me in so many ways. We will find him, Vincent said, or we will find out what happened to him. Either way, you will have answers. Florence leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. I am afraid of what those answers might be. I know, but whatever they are, we will face them together. They reached Carson City on a Tuesday afternoon, riding into a town that was bigger and busier than Las Vegas. Carson City was the territorial capital, full of politicians and lawyers and businessmen. It took some asking around, but they finally found the address Pettigrew had given them, a 2-story brick building near the Capitol with a brass plaque that read Crane Mining Ventures. The secretary, a prim woman in her 40s, looked at them with polite suspicion. Do you have an appointment with Mr. Crane? No, Vincent said, but we need to speak with him about a survey conducted near Las Vegas last year. It is urgent. Mr. Crane does not see people without appointments. If you would like to leave your information, I can have him contact you. Florence stepped forward, and Vincent felt the air shimmer slightly. This concerns a man named Daniel Brennan. He went missing while working on a survey for your employer. We need answers. The secretary's face went carefully blank. I am sorry, but I cannot help you. Please leave. What are you hiding? Florence demanded, and the temperature in the room began to rise. Papers on the secretary's desk fluttered as though touched by a breeze, though the windows were closed. Vincent put a hand on Florence's arm. Easy, this is not the way. But the damage was done. The secretary had seen enough. She stood abruptly. I am calling the sheriff. You need to leave now. They left, but Vincent could see that Florence was shaking with frustration and barely controlled power. Outside, he pulled her into an alley away from the main street. Breathe. You need to calm down before you lose control. They know something, Florence said. Did you see her face when I mentioned Daniel? She knows what happened to him. Then we will find another way to get information, Vincent said. But frightening secretaries is not going to help your brother. Florence took several deep breaths, and the shimmer in the air faded. I am sorry. I just feel so close to answers, and they are shutting me out again. Everyone always shuts me out. Not everyone, Vincent reminded her gently. I am still here. They spent the rest of the day asking questions around Carson City, trying to find anyone who knew about Crane Mining Ventures and its operations. It was a saloon keeper named Dutch Henry who finally provided useful information. Crane? Sure, I know him. Comes in here sometimes with his business partners. They are into all kinds of mining ventures, but word is they have been focusing on something unusual lately. Some kind of new mineral they think will revolutionize industry. They are being real secretive about it, though. Anyone who works for them has to sign papers promising not to talk about what they find. Has he mentioned a man named Daniel Brennan? Florence asked. Or any surveyors who worked for him? Dutch Henry frowned. Not by name, but a few months back, Crane and his partners were in here celebrating. They said they had secured exclusive rights to some kind of deposit, that they had eliminated the competition. They were drunk and being loud about it. One of them, fellow named Hutchins, said something about a surveyor who would not take their money. Crane told him to shut up, said some things were better kept quiet. Vincent felt Florence tense beside him. Where can we find this Hutchins? He has a house on the north edge of town, near the lumber mill. Big place. Cannot miss it. They found the house as the sun was setting. It was indeed large, a 2-story affair with a manicured lawn that looked out of place in the dusty Nevada landscape. Vincent knocked on the door, and it was opened by a man in his 50s, well-dressed and soft around the middle. His eyes went immediately to Florence, and something like recognition flickered across his face. You must be the sister, Hutchins said. Brennan's sister. You look like him around the eyes. You know my brother, Florence said. What happened to him? Where is he? Hutchins looked behind them, checking the street, then gestured them inside. Quickly, before someone sees you here. They followed him into a parlor filled with expensive furniture and paintings. Hutchins poured himself a whiskey with shaking hands. I have been expecting someone to come asking. I have been dreading it, to be honest. What Crane did, what we all did, it has been eating at me. What did you do? Vincent asked, his voice hard. Hutchins drank deeply, then sat heavily in a chair. Your brother found those crystals, the ones that generate heat. Do you know what something like that could be worth? Unlimited energy, or close to it. It would change everything. Transportation, manufacturing, heating. Crane saw the potential immediately. He offered to buy Brennan's data to make him a partner, but Brennan refused. Said he had a contract with the railroad, that the discovery belonged to them. So you killed him, Florence said flatly. No! Hutchins looked horrified. We did not kill him. Crane had him taken. He is being held at a property Crane owns, a ranch outside Virginia City. Crane wants the crystal deposit, and he needs Brennan to survey the full extent of it, to document everything properly. He has been keeping Brennan there for months, forcing him to work. I swear to you, the man is alive. Relief and rage washed over Florence's face in equal measure. Vincent put a hand on her shoulder before she could explode. Where exactly is this ranch? About 20 miles south of Virginia City. It is called the Iron Creek Ranch, but you cannot just ride in there. Crane has guards, armed men. He has too much invested in this to let anyone interfere. He kidnapped a man, Vincent said. That is a crime. We can go to the sheriff. Hutchins laughed bitterly. Crane owns the sheriff in Virginia City. He owns a lot of people. You go to the law and you will end up in a cell or worse. No, if you want to get Brennan out, you will have to do it yourselves. And you will have to be smart about it. Florence leaned forward. Why are you telling us this? If Crane finds out, it will ruin you. Because I am tired of being part of something this wrong, Hutchins said. I got into business to make money, not to become a criminal. Every day I wonder if Crane will decide that Brennan is not necessary anymore, if he will just make the problem disappear permanently. I do not want that on my conscience. They left Hutchins's house with directions to the Iron Creek Ranch and a sick sense of urgency. Daniel was alive, but he was being held prisoner, forced to work for the men who had kidnapped him, and they had a very small window to get him out before Crane decided he was more trouble than he was worth. They found a hotel in Carson City and spent the evening planning. Virginia City was another 30 miles north, and the Iron Creek Ranch was beyond that. They would need supplies, and they would need to approach carefully. Vincent had no illusions about what they were up against. Armed guards and a wealthy man who had already shown he was willing to commit crimes to protect his interests made for a dangerous combination. That night, lying in bed in her hotel room, Florence could not sleep. She stood at the window, looking out at the dark street, and Vincent, who had the room next door, heard her moving around. He knocked softly on the connecting door. "Come in," she said. He found her standing in her nightgown, arms wrapped around herself. "I keep thinking about Daniel," she said. "About what he has been through these past months. He must have been so frightened. He must have felt so alone." Vincent came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her. "But he is alive. That is what matters. We will get him out." Florence turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Promise me something. If this goes wrong, if something happens, promise me you will make sure Daniel gets home safely, even if I cannot." "Nothing is going to happen to you," Vincent said fiercely. "I will not allow it." "You cannot control everything," Florence said. "Vincent, I need you to promise. My brother means everything to me. If I could trade my life for his freedom, I would do it without hesitation." "Do not talk like that," Vincent said. "Florence, you are not expendable. Your life has value. You have value." "I have spent most of my life believing I was a burden," Florence said, "a problem to be managed. You are the first person who has ever made me feel differently. But Vincent, if it comes down to a choice between me and Daniel, I need you to choose him. Promise me." Vincent wanted to refuse, wanted to tell her that he would never make that choice, but he saw the determination in her eyes, the fierce love she had for her brother, and he understood. "I promise," he said finally. "But I promise you something else too. I will do everything in my power to make sure it does not come to that. You are both getting out of this safely. That is my real promise." Florence kissed him then, deep and desperate, and Vincent responded with all the fear and love and determination he was feeling. They made love that night, slow and careful, learning the shape and taste of each other, speaking without words all the things that were too large for language. Afterwards, Florence fell asleep in his arms, and Vincent lay awake, planning and replanning how they would get Daniel Brennan out of the Iron Creek Ranch. They left for Virginia City the next morning, riding hard. The landscape grew more mountainous, covered in pine forests that smelled sharp and clean. They reached Virginia City by late afternoon, a booming silver mining town built into the side of a mountain. It was loud and crowded and wealthy, a place where fortunes were made and lost daily. They did not linger in town, instead, riding south toward the Iron Creek Ranch. As they drew closer, they slowed, becoming more cautious. Vincent found a high point overlooking the ranch and pulled out the small spyglass he had brought from the Double J. The ranch was well appointed, with a main house, several outbuildings, and a large barn. He counted 6 men moving around the property, all armed. It was clear this was not a working ranch, but a prison disguised as one. "How do we get in?" Florence asked. "We do not go in through the front," Vincent said. "We wait until dark, then approach from the back. There is a line of trees that comes close to the barn. If Daniel is being held anywhere, it will likely be in one of the outbuildings or the barn itself." They spent the remaining daylight hours watching the ranch, learning the patterns of the guards. As the sun set, they moved into position, leaving their horses tied in the trees with enough slack to graze. Vincent checked his rifle and his knife, and Florence touched his arm. "If we are caught," she asked. "We will not be caught," Vincent said. "But if something goes wrong, you run. Get to the horses and ride for Virginia City. Find someone who will listen. Tell them everything." "I thought we were staying together," Florence said. "We are," Vincent said. "But I need to know you will be safe if this does not go according to plan." Florence nodded reluctantly, and they moved through the darkness toward the ranch. The moon was only a sliver, which helped conceal them but made navigation harder. They reached the tree line behind the barn without incident and paused, listening. Voices drifted from the main house, and they could see lamplight in the windows. The barn was dark, but there was a smaller building nearby with a light showing through a barred window. Vincent pointed to it, and Florence nodded. They crept toward the building, moving carefully. As they got closer, Vincent could hear someone inside, a man's voice speaking quietly. They reached the window and peered inside. A man sat at a rough table, writing by lamplight. He was thin, with sandy hair and a beard that looked like it had been grown from necessity rather than choice. His clothes were worn, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But there was no mistaking the family resemblance. This was Daniel Brennan. Florence made a small sound, and Daniel's head jerked up. For a moment they stared at each other through the barred window, and then Daniel was on his feet, moving to the window. "Florence, is that really you?" "It is me," Florence whispered. "Daniel, we are getting you out of here." "You should not be here," Daniel said urgently. "This place is guarded. Crane will kill you if he finds you." "Then we need to move quickly," Vincent said. "Is there another way out of this building?" "Just the door, and it is locked from the outside. The window is too small and the bars are solid." Vincent examined the door. It was heavy wood with a substantial lock. He could probably shoot it off, but the noise would bring every guard running. He was considering their options when Florence touched his arm. "Move back," she said. "Both of you." Vincent understood what she intended. "Florence, the effort, the control required." "I can do this," she said. "Daniel is right there. I am not leaving without him." Vincent moved back, and Daniel pressed himself against the far wall of his prison. Florence stood before the door, placed her hands on the wood, and closed her eyes. The air began to shimmer, and Vincent felt heat wash over him like standing too close to a forge. The wood of the door started to smoke, and the metal lock began to glow red. "Florence, that is enough," Vincent said urgently. "You will exhaust yourself." But Florence did not stop. The heat intensified until Vincent had to shield his face. With a sound like a gunshot, the lock shattered. The door swung open, and Florence collapsed. Vincent caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her in his arms. She was burning up, her skin feverish. "Daniel! We need to move. Now!" Daniel grabbed the lantern and what looked like a journal from the table, then followed Vincent into the darkness. They had made it perhaps 20 yards when shouts erupted from the ranch house. They heard the lock break, Daniel said. They will be on us in seconds. Vincent was carrying Florence, which meant he could not shoot if it came to that. Lead the way to the horses, fast as you can. They ran through the darkness, Daniel in the lead. Behind them, Vincent could hear men shouting, organizing a search. A gunshot cracked through the night, but it was not aimed at them, just a signal. They reached the horses, and Vincent lifted Florence onto her mare's saddle, holding her there while Daniel mounted. Vincent swung up onto River, keeping one arm around Florence to hold her secure. Ride! They crashed through the forest, branches whipping at them, more gunshots behind them, and Vincent heard a bullet crack past his head. He bent low over River's neck, keeping Florence tight against him. She was barely conscious, murmuring incoherently. Daniel led them on a twisting route through the trees, and gradually the sounds of pursuit faded. They rode for another hour before Daniel finally slowed. There is a mining camp about 2 miles ahead. We can stop there. Get help. The mining camp was a collection of tents and rough shelters where a dozen Chinese laborers were working a small gold claim. They looked up in alarm as the 3 riders thundered in, but when Daniel explained they needed help, an older man named Lee came forward. The woman, she is sick? Lee asked. She used her abilities to break down a door, Vincent said. She exhausted herself. She is burning with fever. Lee examined Florence and spoke rapidly in Chinese to the other men. They brought cool water and cloth, and Lee bathed Florence's face and wrists. She must rest. The fever will break, but she needs time. They laid Florence in one of the tents, and Vincent sat beside her, holding her hand. Daniel collapsed on the ground nearby, looking dazed. I cannot believe you came for me. Florence, how did you find me? Your journal from the mission, Vincent said. It led us to Crane. We have been following your trail for weeks. I should have been more careful, Daniel said. I knew the crystal deposit was valuable, but I did not think anyone would go this far. They grabbed me at the mission, knocked me unconscious. When I woke up, I was at that ranch. Crane said I could either work for him or disappear into the desert. I have been surveying the deposit for months, documenting everything. I kept thinking someone would notice I was missing, that someone would come. He looked at his sister's unconscious form. I never imagined it would be Florence. She must have been terrified, coming all this way. She was determined, Vincent said. She loves you. She would have walked through fire to find you. She almost did, Daniel said, then studied Vincent. You are the cowboy she mentioned in her thoughts just now. Vincent, she talked about you while she was delirious. She loves you. I love her too, Vincent said simply. Daniel smiled despite his exhaustion. Good. She deserves someone who sees her for who she is. Too many people have only seen what she can do. Florence's fever broke near dawn. She woke to find Vincent still holding her hand and Daniel asleep nearby. We got him? She asked weakly. We got him, Vincent confirmed. You did it, Florence. You saved your brother. Tears streamed down her face. I was so afraid I had lost him. Never, Daniel said, waking up. Little sister, you are entirely too stubborn to lose me. He moved to kneel beside her makeshift bed. I am so sorry you had to go through all of this. You are alive, Florence said. That is all that matters. They rested at the mining camp for 2 days, letting Florence recover her strength and planning their next move. Daniel had all of his survey data with him, journals full of meticulous observations about the crystal deposit. This needs to go to the railroad company, he said. It is their property legally, and we need to report Crane to the authorities. Hutchins said Crane owns the sheriff in Virginia City, Vincent said. We need to go somewhere he does not have influence. San Francisco, Daniel suggested. The railroad headquarters are there and the federal marshals. We report everything to them, and Crane will not be able to hide. It was a long journey, but it was the right move. They thanked the miners, who refused payment for their help, and headed west toward California. The trip took nearly 2 weeks, traveling carefully to avoid any pursuit. Florence's strength returned slowly, and Vincent watched her carefully, making sure she did not push herself too hard. They talked a lot during that journey, the three of them. Daniel told them about his months of captivity, about Crane's obsession with the crystals, and his ruthless business practices. Florence told Daniel about her journey from Missouri, about the fear and rejection she had faced, and about Vincent. Daniel listened and watched them together, and Vincent could see him gradually relaxing, accepting that his sister had found someone who truly cared for her. "You are good for her," Daniel told Vincent one night when Florence had gone to sleep. "I have never seen her this comfortable with another person. Usually she is so guarded." "She has reason to be guarded," Vincent said. "The world has not been kind to her." "No," Daniel agreed. "But you are. That makes all the difference." They reached San Francisco in late September. The city was vast and bustling, so different from the desert towns they had been traveling through. They went immediately to the railroad headquarters and requested a meeting with the highest official available. The man who met with them was named Harrison, a vice president of operations. He listened to Daniel's story with increasing anger, examined the survey data, and finally sat back in his chair. "This is extraordinary. Both the mineral deposit itself and what Crane has done. We will contact the federal marshals immediately. Mr. Brennan, the railroad will want to compensate you for what you have endured." "I just want Crane arrested," Daniel said. "I want to make sure he cannot do this to anyone else." Harrison nodded. "Consider it done. We have resources and connections. Cyrus Crane will face justice." Over the next few weeks, everything moved quickly. Federal marshals arrested Crane and several of his associates, including Hutchins, who cooperated with the investigation in exchange for a lesser sentence. The crystal deposit was secured by the railroad, and a team of scientists began studying its properties. Daniel was not only compensated, but offered a permanent position with the railroad as their chief mineralogist. Florence and Vincent rented rooms in a small hotel while everything was settled. San Francisco was overwhelming after the open spaces of Nevada, but it was also anonymous. No one here knew about Florence's abilities. No one stared or whispered or crossed the street to avoid her. It was, in many ways, the first time in years that she had felt truly free. One evening, as they walked along the waterfront, watching the ships in the harbor, Florence turned to Vincent. "What happens now? Daniel has a new job here. He is safe and successful. My mission is complete." "What do you want to happen?" Vincent asked. "I want to be with you," Florence said. "But Vincent, your life is in Nevada. Your job, your friends, everything you know. I cannot ask you to give that up for me." Vincent stopped walking and turned to face her. The setting sun painted the water gold behind her, and she was so beautiful in that moment that it made his chest ache. "Florence Brennan, you are not asking me to give up anything. You are offering me everything I have ever wanted. A life with someone who understands me, who challenges me, who makes me want to be better. I do not care if that life is in Nevada or California or the moon. As long as you are there, that is where I want to be." "But your work," Florence protested. "There are ranches in California," Vincent said. "There is work for a man who knows horses and cattle. Or maybe I do something different. Maybe I help you and Daniel with his research. Maybe I do whatever needs doing. It does not matter. What matters is building a life together." Florence was crying now, but she was also smiling. "Are you certain? I come with complications. My gift, my past, all of it." "I have never been more certain of anything," Vincent said. He dropped to one knee right there on the waterfront, in front of a dozen strangers. "Florence Brennan, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you are loved and valued and absolutely perfect exactly as you are?" "Yes," Florence said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married a month later in a small church in San Francisco, with Daniel standing as witness. Florence wore a simple dress of pale blue, and Vincent wore his best suit. Mrs. Chin even traveled from Las Vegas for the occasion, bringing Tommy with her. It was a small ceremony, intimate and perfect. Vincent and Florence found a house on the outskirts of the city, a small place with a garden where Florence could practice using her gift without fear of being observed. Vincent found work at a ranch in the nearby hills, and Florence began helping Daniel with his research, using her abilities to study the unique properties of the crystals. Life was not perfect. There were still moments when Florence's control slipped, when fear or anger caused objects to move or the air to heat. There were still people who sensed her difference and reacted with suspicion. But now she had Vincent beside her, steady and accepting, reminding her that she was more than her gift, that she was worthy of love. Daniel thrived in his new position, traveling frequently to study mineral deposits throughout the West. He visited Florence and Vincent often, and the three of them would sit up late into the night, talking and laughing and planning futures that had once seemed impossible. 2 years after their marriage, Florence gave birth to their first child, a son they named Thomas, with dark hair like Vincent's and his mother's pale blue eyes. Vincent held his son for the first time and felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. "He is perfect," he said, and Florence, exhausted but radiant, agreed. "Do you think he will have my abilities?" she asked. "If he does, we will teach him to control them," Vincent said. "We will make sure he knows he is loved and accepted, no matter what. He will never feel the way you did, Florence. I promise you that." Thomas turned out to be a normal child, without any sign of his mother's gift. Their second child, a daughter born 3 years later, was different. Emma was only 6 months old when objects began moving around her crib, and Florence cried with a mixture of fear and relief when it happened. "She has it," she told Vincent. "What do we do?" "We love her," Vincent said. "We teach her. We make sure she knows she is not alone." And they did. Emma grew up knowing exactly what she was, learning control from the earliest age with her mother's patient guidance. She grew up in a house full of love, where her gift was treated as a natural part of who she was rather than something to fear or hide. She grew up watching her father look at her mother with absolute devotion, learning that different did not mean unworthy, that love was possible even for those the world might not understand. Vincent never returned to Nevada permanently, though he and Florence visited occasionally. They went back to Las Vegas once, 5 years after they had first met, and walked down the main street holding hands. A few people still stared, still whispered, but Florence held her head high, secure in the knowledge that she was loved, that she had family, that she belonged. They visited the old mission where Daniel had been taken, and Florence stood in the ruined chapel where she had sensed her brother's fear. "I was so afraid," she said. "I thought I had lost him. I thought I was alone." "But you were not," Vincent said. "Even before you met me, you were not alone. Your strength, your determination, your love for your brother, all of that was inside you. I did not give you that. I just helped you see it." "You gave me more than that," Florence said. "You gave me acceptance. You gave me a safe place to be myself. You gave me a future I never thought I could have." Vincent pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "You gave me the same things. We saved each other, Florence." Daniel eventually married a botanist named Margaret, a brilliant woman who shared his love of science and did not mind his sister's unusual abilities. They had 3 children and lived a half-mile from Vincent and Florence, close enough that the cousins grew up more like siblings. The extended family gathered for dinners and holidays, a loud, loving collection of people who accepted each other's quirks and differences without question. Vincent and Florence had 2 more children, another daughter, and then a final son. Their house was always full of noise and laughter, and the occasional floating object when Emma got excited. Vincent taught all of his children to ride, to rope, to appreciate the land and the animals. Florence taught them to read, to think critically, to never apologize for who they were. On their 10th anniversary, Vincent and Florence returned to the waterfront where he had proposed. They were older now, marked by life and parenthood and the passage of time. But the love between them had only deepened, growing richer and more complex with each shared experience. "Do you ever regret it?" Florence asked. "Giving up your life in Nevada? Tying yourself to someone as complicated as me?" Vincent laughed. "Not for a single second. Florence, loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done. Living with you, building this life with you, it is not a sacrifice. It is a gift. You are a gift. I love you," Florence said. "I will love you for the rest of my life and whatever comes after." "And I love you," Vincent replied. "I understood what you were from the beginning, and I did not fear it. I never will. You are exactly who you are supposed to be, Florence Rourke, and I am the luckiest man alive to have you." They stood there as the sun set over the San Francisco Bay, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful out of fear and loneliness and difference. The world had not understood Florence Brennan, had feared what she could do. But Vincent Rourke had understood, and he had not feared. And that understanding, that acceptance, that love had changed everything. Years passed, and their children grew and had children of their own. Emma's gift manifested in her oldest daughter, and Florence taught her granddaughter the same control she had taught Emma. The gift passed through the family line, no longer hidden or feared, but accepted as part of their heritage. Vincent and Florence grew old together, their hair silvering, their hands becoming weathered, but their love remaining constant. Daniel retired from the railroad at 65, having helped discover and catalog dozens of significant mineral deposits throughout the West. The crystal deposit near Las Vegas became famous in scientific circles, its properties leading to innovations in heat storage and energy. Daniel always made sure people knew that it had nearly cost him everything, that greed and ruthlessness had almost destroyed him. He became an advocate for stronger protections for surveyors and prospectors, using his position to push for reforms. On Vincent's 70th birthday, the entire family gathered at the house he and Florence had bought all those years ago. There were grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a sprawling family tree that had grown from the love between a cowboy and a woman with a gift. They sat on the porch as the sun set, and Florence leaned against Vincent's shoulder. "We made something good," she said. "Out of all that fear and pain and uncertainty, we made something beautiful." "We did," Vincent agreed. "And it all started because I was not afraid." "No," Florence said. "It started because you understood." That made all the difference. Thomas, their oldest son, now 48 and running his own ranch, raised a glass. "To my parents, to understanding, to acceptance, to love that does not flinch in the face of difference, to the best example anyone could ask for." The family echoed the toast, glasses raised to the couple who had shown them all what true love looked like. Vincent and Florence sat surrounded by the life they had built, by the people they had brought into the world and raised with love and acceptance. It was more than either of them had ever dreamed possible in those early days in Las Vegas, when fear had followed Florence like a shadow, and Vincent had been a drifting cowboy with no roots. They had found each other in the Wild West of 1878, in a small Nevada town where people feared what they could not understand. But Vincent Rourke had understood Florence Brennan from the first moment he saw her, had seen past her gift to the woman beneath. He had not feared her difference but embraced it, had loved her not despite what she was but including all of it. And Florence had loved him back with a fierce devotion, grateful for his acceptance but loving him for so much more than that, for his steadiness, his kindness, his absolute certainty that she deserved happiness. Their love story became legend in the family, passed down through generations. The tale of how Vincent had walked Florence to Mrs. Chin's boarding house, how they had searched for Daniel together, how Florence had burned through a locked door to save her brother, the story of a proposal on a waterfront at sunset, of a marriage that lasted 62 years until Vincent passed peacefully in his sleep at 94, Florence's hand in his. Florence lived another 2 years, surrounded by family who loved her, who had never feared her gift, who understood that she was simply herself. On the day she died, at 96, Emma was with her, holding her hand just as Florence had held Vincent's hand through so many years. "Tell me again," Emma said. "Tell me how you and Papa met." Florence smiled, her pale blue eyes still sharp despite her age. "I arrived in Las Vegas on a Tuesday in July, and everyone was afraid of me. Everyone except your father. He saw me, really saw me, and he was not afraid. He understood, and that understanding changed my entire life. It gave me everything: love, family, a place to belong. Never underestimate the power of being understood, Emma. It is the greatest gift anyone can give." Those were her last words, a final testament to the love that had defined her life. She was buried beside Vincent in a cemetery overlooking the bay, their headstones side by side as they had been in life. The family gathered to mourn and celebrate, to remember and honor two people who had shown them all what it meant to love without fear, to accept without reservation, to build a life on understanding and devotion. The Wild West that had been their backdrop was long gone, replaced by modern cities and technology and progress. But the love between Florence Brennan and Vincent Rourke remained timeless, a story of two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had refused to let fear dictate their future, who had chosen love in the face of a world that did not always understand. They had feared what they could not understand about her. The cowboy understood and did not fear. And from that understanding came a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of acceptance, the courage of vulnerability, and the triumph of seeing someone exactly as they are and loving them all the more for it. Their story ended not with tragedy, but with fulfillment, with a life well lived, with generations of descendants who carried forward their legacy of acceptance and love. It was, in every way that mattered, a happily ever after.